Thank you for joining us for Backyard Composting 101. In this presentation, we will go through the 10 simple steps you can take to create your own backyard compost. Did you know that organic materials like grass clippings, leaves, and kitchen scraps make up about half of what individuals send to the landfill each year? Composting is an alternative to throwing out these organic materials. Plus, you are creating a nutrient-rich soil additive that can act as a natural fertilizer to everything that you grow. But first, before we discuss how to create compost, let's talk a little bit about what compost is and why composting is so beneficial. Composting is defined as the purposeful decomposition of organic materials by microorganisms, which creates a rich soil-like material called humus. The benefits of composting are numerous. Composting provides a food source for beneficial soil organisms, releases nutrients over the long term, and enhances soil structure. Adding compost to your garden beds and lawn and around trees and shrubs can also reduce your water consumption and lower your water bill by up to 20%. Ultimately, composting helps divert yard and kitchen waste from landfills and in turn reduces methane gas emissions. Now, let's go through the 10 easy steps to build your own backyard compost pile. In step 1, you will need to select a level area at least 3 feet long by 3 feet wide that receives partial sun during the day. It's totally up to you whether your compost pile is an open pile or contained within a purchased or do-it-yourself container. Before you start building your pile, it's important to first collect enough material so that the pile is a minimum of 3 feet long by 3 feet wide by 3 feet high. And here's a pro tip. If you decide to use a container to hold your compost, please make sure that you are following all 10 steps that are needed to correctly build your pile. Once you have successfully constructed it, you can simply transfer it to your compost container. Next, you will need to loosen the soil in the area that you would like to build your pile. This invites microorganisms located in the soil to be part of your compost. Why is it important, you might ask? It's important because the fungi, bacteria, insects, and earthworms help break down and aerate your compost pile so it continues to reduce in size and stays oxygen rich. Without them, it would take much longer to break down into usable compost and there would be fewer nutrients in your soil for plants to use. I should also mention that a couple of days after you build your pile, the proliferation of microorganisms will cause it to heat up, especially in the middle. This is a sign that you have done a good job and have provided enough vital nitrogen and carbon sources to feed them. The materials that you build your pile with are referred to as greens and browns and can be gathered from your kitchen and yard. Examples of green, nitrogen-rich materials include fruit and vegetable scraps, coffee grounds, all non-meat and dairy-free food scraps, weeds without the seeds, alfalfa, and green grass clippings. Examples of brown, carbon-rich materials include cut-up coffee filters and newspaper, straw, and brown grass clippings and leaves. To build your pile, you will need to add 1/3 volume chopped up green material on top of 2/3 volume chopped up browns. This does not need to be exact, just take your best guess at the correct ratio. After you build up your first layer of greens and browns, you want to sprinkle some soil on top. Again, the first layer of your pile will need to be 1/3 volume of green material and 2/3 volume of brown material. In other words, a 1 to 3 inch layer of chopped greens and then add 2 to 6 inches of chopped browns on top. Then add your soil. Like we discussed before, soil adds essential microorganisms to your pile and aids in decomposing the greens and browns. As you continue to build up different layers of your compost pile to its ideal height of 3 feet, this is always an important step. Now that you have placed your greens, browns, and soil together into your first layer, the next step is to mix all of the ingredients together well with a pitchfork or shovel. You can even use your hands. The reason that we mix the material together is that it's important to combine the greens and browns so that they are both readily available for single-celled microorganisms to consume. The fungi and bacteria are the first occupants of the pile, and unfortunately, they cannot move around like the insects that enter the pile later can. So it's important to give them all the nutrients they need in place to thrive. They have the important role of raising the temperature of the pile that starts the degradation process. Now we want to continue on by watering this layer lightly and evenly. You want to avoid soaking the material because watering in excess can compact the material and create an oxygen poor environment resulting in a foul odor. The rule of thumb is that after watering, you should be able to grab some of the material in your hand, squeeze it, and no water runs out. Basically, the consistency of a wrung out sponge. So here at step 7, you've basically learned how to create your own backyard compost pile. Because building your pile up to 3 feet in height ensures that you have the ideal conditions for material breakdown, you should create a new layer if you have the material available. So if you have more greens and browns, you can continue to build up your pile by starting the process all over again on top of the first layer you created. Don't worry about the first layer that you just finished because it's done for now. Just be concerned with making sure you create the second layer as you did the first, going through all the steps. You can continue doing this until you have a pile at least 3 feet high. And at this point, you are well on your way to making compost. Once you have successfully constructed your pile, it's time to cover it. If you are placing your compost in a container, make sure to close the lid. Covering your compost is important because it keeps your pile from blowing away, deters animals, and helps it retain moisture and not dry out. You can use plastic or a piece of cloth to cover your pile. You can even use a thick layer of straw. If you are using plastic or cloth, make sure that it has a few holes in it so the pile can breathe. Like adding too much water, a lack of available air can cause foul odors. Additionally, the organisms working hard inside the pile need plenty of oxygen to flourish. So now that you have successfully constructed your backyard compost pile, you need to maintain it. What that means is that either weekly or every other week, uncover your pile and remix the layers of greens, browns, and soil. Add water like before and then recover your pile. The reason for doing so is to create new air channels that keep your pile aerated, as well as redistribute the browns and greens for the single-celled organisms that can't move around. By remixing your compost layers, the microbes are renourished, the temperature heats up again, and optimal breakdown continues to occur. The more you maintain your compost pile, the faster you will have usable compost for all of your planting needs. The rate at which your compost breaks down depends on how often you attend to your pile. Typically, it can take from 2 to 24 months to have usable compost. If you decide to do absolutely nothing to maintain your pile, it would continue to break down, but very slowly. Once you think that your compost is ready to use, take a handful, place it in a Ziploc bag, leave it on a sunny windowsill for a day, and then open it up and smell it. Finished compost is brownish black, crumbly, and smells like a damp forest floor. There is no real odor to it. If it smells like ammonia, it is still too nitrogen rich and needs to further cure. Wait until your compost has no scent. At that point, it is ready to use. This concludes my presentation. For additional resources, I would recommend visiting Denver Urban Gardens website at www.doug.org. They have many useful resources on composting and offer free in-person composting classes throughout the summer each year. You can also request their brochure, Browns and Greens Make Gold, a guide to backyard composting, which includes a comprehensive list of acceptable green and brown materials to include in your pile, troubleshooting tips, and guidance on how to use your finished compost. It's a handy reference guide and it's available in both English and Spanish. Thank you for joining me today and tuning in to our virtual Earth Day celebration. If you have any questions about backyard composting, please send me an email to sustainability@lakewood.org. I would be happy to answer questions about how you can start the process of recycling both your kitchen and yard waste into a nutrient-rich soil amendment for all of your plantings. Happy Earth Day to all of you!